afternoon, everyone. My name is Habiba Idrisi. I'm the Community Outreach Director for the American Association for Arab Women. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today in celebrating Women's International Day. Before I proceed, allow me to recognize the presence of our city's officials, Mayor Gary Christensen, School Committee Member Adam Weldai, and also a candidate for City Council, so good luck. I'd like to also take a moment to thank Mr. Anthony Dickinson from St. Paul's Church for granting us the use of the facility. Mr. Sal Khan for videotaping the event. Mr. Rashid Mukhabir from Zara Magazine. Last but not least, all the members of the AAAW, thank you for the continuing help and dedication. Our program today features 3 distinguished women who will share with us their journeys of challenges and successes while navigating through life. Our guest speakers are Farah Asiraj, an English teacher Sharon Burton, Community Coordinator for the North Suburban WIC Office in Malden with Hallmark Health. Selma Abu Nadi, speech language pathologist. And in an effort to keep the session as interactive and entertaining as possible, we have our friend Rita Johari running a challenge contest followed by fun facts with prizes for the winners. We will then have an open discussion where you'll get to ask your questions. Finally, the program will end with a music performance by Ahlan Saidi and Sumaya Mahmoud. March 8th, around the globe, represents the opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments of women while calling for greater equality. It is also a symbol of struggles that women everywhere have undergone to gain equality and rights, and a reminder for all of us of how far there is still to go. This is the time to uphold women's economic, political, and social achievements and contributions to society, recognize challenges, and focus on women's rights and gender equality to mobilize all people to do their parts, including governments, who need to step up their efforts and make a commitment to identify and address the challenges that are holding women back from reaching their full potential. Gender equality, for example, is not only a social justice, but also a basic human right for women to be able to enjoy a full legal equality and equality of opportunity. And for the girls born today, anywhere in the world, to have the same life prospects as their male counterparts. And for that, we have to work hard, support, and empower women, because by empowering women, we empower humanity. I will conclude my introduction by borrowing a quote said by United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in his message for Women's Day earlier this week. And the quote starts, "When we unleash the power of women, we can secure the future for all." Thank you. I will now hand the mic to Farah, our first guest speaker, Siraj, and please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me without the microphone? Yes. Thank you. I'm just going to pause that. Thank you. I'm also a loud talker. So, being a teacher, you kind of have to project and use your teacher voice as much as you can. So thank you all for being here today. Again, my name is Sarah. My family originated from Morocco. Like many of us here, we immigrated under other circumstances that were probably more privileged than many in other parts of the world. And I didn't really understand that until late. I used to think, we all have our struggles, we all have our challenges as people. And as women, especially as women, I think there is an experience that we hand down these experiences in our culture, what we understand to be true about the world and how we nurture our children from generation to generation. And so I think back to my grandmothers and those before them and their grandmothers, and I often reflect on what was their experience, what was their struggle, how much of it relates to what I feel and what I understand about who I am today, and what is it about them that is a part of me, and what is it that I can carry on when I teach my daughter how it is that we sort of survive in this world in a gentle and nurturing way. I think it's really important as women that as much as we play the various roles, that there is a part of us that is intuitive, that is a part of why we are women. It's that we are givers, we are generous, and we are sharers, and that's why we gather amongst each other, whether it's by cooking a meal and feeling that love and warmth through a meal, whether it's by giving a hug in a time of need, whether it's saying those comforting words that really make us connect to our humanness, our human being, our essence. And I think that women use their words and their emotions very differently, I would say, than men, in a way that is healing. The purpose of us really being here and being who we are is that we can share space together that will make us better, right? Not just as people, but that will ground us in who we are, and that collectively there is something that we all share as people. And as women, the relevance of what we do for a living and what we do for a job, and as a wife and as a mother, sometimes it plays a bigger part. Sometimes it plays a bigger role, and there is a balance, there is a difficulty in trying to manage all of what this means. And especially for our new arrivals, for those who immigrate here and have played a different role in their home country, for example. Many women who never had to work because they were a stay-at-home mother, or maybe because culturally they were expected to play, in terms of what the cultural norms are, play a role where they took care of their home, they took care of their children, they took care of the cooking. And that is a very, very important job. And I only wish that more of us would see the relevance in it and who we are today as a community. I wish that we did have more time to be mothers, to be wives, to share in the moments with our sisters and our families. And as a community, how much of that is reflected in what we see in our children, and how they engage with each other, and how as a community they come together. And so as I was thinking about all the struggles and challenges, I always have to think about, what are my privileges? What are my privileges? What makes me feel that in this day and age, I've had so many opportunities, and absolutely we can focus on the challenges and the struggles, but what makes me feel like that I have any more of a right than another woman or another person at that? And I think of those women like my mother, for example, who was not allowed to go to school after the age of 14. She fought hard. I mean, my mother was a fighter. She stood out from the rest of the family and all of the girls and her sisters. And she said, no, I want to go to school. But that's not the expectation of where her family and her parents felt was important and relevant. And that was the choice that was made. And so for years, she had struggled with that acceptance. And so her story, like many other stories of women who were not given those opportunities. So my opportunity, my privilege is education. Education, the fact that my parents immigrated here, the fact that I've had the opportunity to have a free education in a free society, that to me is something that I will not take for granted. And so I've obviously, we have had, as we grow and there's a different type of learning, we've had the educational learning in terms of college, right? I've gotten my master's, I've done a Fulbright studies, I'm applying for doctoral programs, but that's not the learning that really teaches you how to be a person. That's not the learning that we need to pass down to our students. And so as I transitioned back to teaching this year, after 6 years in administration, I went back to being an English as a second language teacher for high school students, many of whom, actually all of whom are immigrants, many of whom are newcomers, so they had very little to no English, and many of whom have never been to school before. They are students with interrupted formal education. And so I can relate to that struggle because I know my two grandmothers, one of whom has passed and one of whom I'm grateful that she's still with us, are illiterate. Are illiterate not because they didn't want, right? They didn't want to learn, not because they didn't want to be educated, but similar to maybe my mother's path, that was what their experience was, and that was the life that was presented to them. And so when I look at the students that I have, I think of not just gender, because I think there is a different focus here. In the United States, we specifically, we look at different groupings, for example, we kind of categorize, this is a gender issue, for example, right? I mean, if it is a gender issue, then it's just as important for the men as it is for the women, right? I mean, if it is a gender issue, and there are issues that are relative to our boys and our men, then the women should play just as much of a role in addressing that. And similarly, if it's the same, and there's an issue that is relative to girls and women, then the men need to stand up and also fight, and the boys, because it's not about that issue, it's about a human rights issue. It's about equality and that humanness that we all should share. And so, as there is such a big focus around our boys, I very often, see the lack of focus on our girls. On our girls. And who mothers, who nurtures, who takes care of our boys? Who? And so, it all sort of interconnects, right? I mean, if we think about the experiences that our mothers and the stories and what we've learned as humans, if we think about what we learn in school, it's all important. Character development and who we are and what we believe is right to really stand up for, that we need to fight for this. This issue is important. That's not necessarily something we gain in school when we go to college or high school or even middle school. It's a belief. It's a belief system. It's a belief system that starts primarily with home. It starts with your own beliefs. It starts with what you understand to be true, but it's also how much power do you feel? Do you feel empowered in changing it? Do you feel that you have a right in this part? Do you feel that you are part of the issue or part of the solution? And I think when we start to think differently about our own personal challenges, and put ourselves sort of in the back burner, kind of taking ourselves and putting ourselves aside, and thinking broadly about how do we sort of bridge that so it doesn't become a gender issue. What the challenges that our boys face, for example, as much of the challenges our girls face, and how do we sort of look at sex trade, for example? How do we look at domestic violence? How do we view many other issues that are relative to women progressing in terms of pay in the workforce, in terms of leadership even in a workplace? And so in our view, if we don't look at those issues beyond ourselves, whether we are a woman or we are a man, and put ourselves, again, in the back burner, if we don't see the bigger picture and how we individually play a role in a collective society, then how do we move forward to making a change if we don't acknowledge or recognize what the root of it and how we can intersect to make a difference? I think part of growing and developing as a woman is recognizing that, humility is one way of being and living. And so whatever our position is, whether we lead some very important job or whether we are highly educated with a PhD, what we believe and how we transcend that and how we message it, how we share it, and how we sort of help to heal our collective community is what makes us women. It's what makes us valuable. It's what gives us the power. Malala, I'm sure a lot of you know Malala Yousafzai. She's a teenage girl from Pakistan. I started a gender unit with my students. We were actually talking about Martin Luther King, and I said, tell me about a woman that you know in leadership, a woman that you know who's in power, a woman that is making a difference. Well, most of my students couldn't give me a name of anyone. So I said, okay. So I wrote a curriculum unit. We started with Malala, and I'm happy to say that they've learned about Malala, but they've also learned about gender equality. But throughout that process, it is much more than teaching. It's similar to understanding why is this significant? Something that's happening all the way out of Pakistan, all the way in Afghanistan, for example. We think of all these secret schools, madrasas, that were, basically alongside the Taliban in power for, many years that existed, that only primarily focused on teaching girls and teaching girls academics and Arabic. Why is that important? Why is that relevant to you today? You're here in the United States, girls and boys are the same. Why is that relevant? And I think that's the importance of this day. And I think of International Women's Day, that yes, today we can choose a slew of issues, challenges, each of us having their own, each of us has their own relative experience and challenge. But what is it that we can understand even broadly about how do we impact the change? It's by first understanding the problem. It's by first acknowledging that it exists. It's by first understanding that for some of those girls, their experience is not any different than my grandmother's. And why, in 2015, should we allow for that to be in existence? Why should we accept it? And so by pushing to have that awareness and that dialogue across gender, across boundaries, I think that we can move towards understanding our own humanness and how we play a role in making this world a better place, regardless of what our own affiliation or our job, our own power. So we have our own internal power, but what we choose to do with it and how we share it is what is hopefully what our children and our students and those with us will remember. It's through the example, it's through that embodiment of who we are. There are two words I want to leave you with today for those of you who are not Arabic speakers. It is ukhti, ukhti, which is a little hard sound, like the it's a blotter, like So, just spit it out. Ukhti and Ummi. And Ummi. And Ummi, for all of us, it's mother, right? And Ukhti is sister. And so today, on this day, I hope that for those women who are our elders, who have wisdom and experiences, that we listen to them, that we take the moments to understand their experience and their roles, and how do we learn from it. And that I hope that we treat all of the other women beside us as our sisters, like Ukhti, that we give them the same kindness and share with them our own experiences to build them, to make them better, to make them more whole, and to hopefully be able to share that with our next generation, because the most important and valuable lesson we teach is not what we learn in school, it's who we are and our character. And so hopefully more of us today will walk away with more ukhtis and ummis. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. You hooked it up. Much better. Rita will follow on her challenge contact. Do you want this?
Okay. So, just as a little break, we're going to do something a little fun. So I've prepared 7 questions, each all about International Women's Day. And so I'm going to ask you guys, and your job is to answer me, and whoever gets the right answer will get a prize by the beautiful Camilla over here. If you want to stand up. All right, so my first question to all of you is, when were women granted equal voting rights in America? 1950, 1910, or 1920? Go ahead. 1920? Yes. All right, so this one's a bit more tough because I don't know if many people actually know it. The most famous International Women's Day is linked to which event? The February Revolution, the French Revolution, or the American Revolution? Okay, over there, what'd you say? French Revolution. Yeah. So, if anyone can tell me, when did the United Nations actually start sponsoring International Women's Day? Was it 1965, 1977, or 1999? No. Yeah. Right here. So the United Nations didn't actually start sponsoring the International Women's Day until 1977. All right. So the first International Women's Day, when did that actually happen? 1914, 1927, or 1942? Who? It's not 42. It's not 27. Yes, it is 1942. All right, so this question might actually, only a certain number of people could actually answer this question, and that is if you were here at our last event last year. The AAAW hosted an International Women's Day event last year, and we streamed a movie. Now, I was just going to let you guys guess the movie. I don't know if many of you were there, so I'll give you
The mayor is one of them.
Do we want, I'll give you options to make it a little easier. Was it the girls' uprising?
The girls uprising.
It was the girls' uprising. All right, so this one is not a multiple choice question because it should be pretty easy. Can anyone tell me who the first woman to fly a plane was? Who?
Amelia Earhart.
Yes. Did you, Camilla? Right back over there. All right, and this is our last one. The first invention made by a woman was the pencil, the car, or the car heater? No. The car heater, yes. Which, to be completely honest, in this weather is a bit more necessary than the car itself. So that pretty much wraps up my first session for now. I'll give the word back to Habiba, and I'll talk to you guys in a little while.
Thank you, Rita. Our second guest speaker is Sharon Burton from the WIC office. If you could please.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you.
My name is Sharon Burton, and I am the community coordinator for the North Suburban WIC program. That is a picture my daughter put up with me on Facebook because I don't even know how to do that. And I believe that is the Santa Barbara overlooking the ocean. So I was surprised to see that picture. My husband and daughter are in that picture, but cut out. Okay, so as you can see, I'm not really technically astute for a lot of these things, but I'm going to give you a little bit about my background, which is a little different, okay? First of all, I'm going to read something that somebody sent me the other day, and I really loved it. It was by John Lennon, and people know who John Lennon is, and people know who the Beatles are. And this kind of is me. When I was 5 years old, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them that they didn't understand life. Okay, and that was John Lennon, and I love that because that is something I've always kind of thought about in my life, okay? I want to be successful. I've had a very different background, and I'll tell you about it, but I always want to be happy. And women have to fight for that because there's a lot of challenges that come at you. You're a mother, you're a caregiver, but you've got to find that little thing that makes you happy. And this morning what it was for me was the strawberries are in, okay? I sat down this morning and made myself a nice breakfast, and then I ended it with some vanilla ice cream, chocolate chips, and strawberries. Now I will be paying for that later, but it was excellent. Okay, so first of all, I'm no expert on women. But I was a psychology major in college, and it's kind of funny because I'm very observant about people's behavior, okay? So maybe that's why I went that route. Not only in my youth, I grew up in a town very similar to Malden, 2-family, 3-family homes. I'm of Polish and Irish background, so I had a babci, who was a Polish grandmother. She had 8 children. She made pierogi, bułki, whatever. And then I had the Irish side of the family. So although I'm not of the same descent, we had the same issues going on. Very much in a city like Malden, okay? I was always encouraged to go forward. I had parents. My father was the first to be educated to go to college. So that was the generation that came. I was lucky enough going to college. I came to Boston. I got really lucky. I worked at Northeastern University for a couple of years, and I had somebody push me to the co-op program, and I got to learn about engineering. And because of that, I was able to end up in a software company. I worked in a software company with all people from Harvard University and me for about 20 years. So I was very lucky that people pushed me along. So I worked very much in a man's world, okay? And then towards the end of, kind of after September 11th and times like that, times were changing, I left my job and people thought I was crazy, okay? And I came back to the community and got a job with Hallmark Health, okay? took a big cut in pay, did a lot of things, but I wanted to be around to raise my daughter. So that's kind of what happened. So I've had a very interesting perspective seeing the corporate world, okay, and kind of the nonprofit world. And let me tell you, the problems are the same, okay? They might look different when people have money and have a lot of facade out front, but everybody's trying to do the right thing. We use these things in the WIC office all the time. Women are women and mothers are mothers, and don't get in our way when it comes to our children and raising our families, okay? So we are very strong, and I have been around a lot of strong women, and I'm going to talk about a few of them, okay? First one is a woman named Molly Fanning. Now, the Irish always had, everybody was Mary, Margaret, Mary, I don't know who. No, my Aunt Molly, I'm not even sure if that was her name, was so bedridden with arthritis that I've never saw her outside of her bed, okay? So she lived in a house with two other aunts. They never were married. The reason was they were around during World War II, and a lot of their significant others were probably killed in the war. So they lived together, three aunts, Irish aunts, and my Aunt Molly was always in her bed. I never saw her outside of her bed. But do you want to know what? She was engaging. Every time I came to visit, she was talking about current events. She would read the newspaper with her hands this much in arthritis, and she would talk, politics, current events, what's going on. So from her room, which she really didn't leave every time that I knew her, she lived to be almost 90 years old, she was engaged in life. So what I say to people all the time is be engaged, find something, pay attention, read the paper, read something, know what's going on. Have an opinion. It's okay to have an opinion, and it's okay to get educated by other people. I'm constantly asking questions about religion, politics. You learn from people. People will tell you what's going on. So ask some questions. So Molly Fanning was one of them. The second one is my grandmother, Joan Cianco. And it is so funny because I'm looking over here, and I see this. And who knows what they call this woman from the World War II era? Does anybody know? No more gifts? Nope. It's called Rosie the Riveter. They used to call this woman Rosie the Riveter. And these were the women from the World War II era who did everything they could during the war to keep the country going. My grandmother was of that generation. She worked, we always laugh, how many jobs did Nana have? We have no idea. She worked in a factory. She worked here. She was a waitress. She did this. She did everything, even when she didn't need to do it. She lived to be 94 years old. The last 15 years of her life, she volunteered at the hospital every day, never got paid, and loved every second of it. Now, she lived to be 94 because she, again, was engaged. They used to say, Joan, why don't you take a job over here? We'll pay you. She said, well, then I'll have to show up. I might not show up. It'd be a snowstorm, and I go, Nana, you're not going to work tomorrow. Well, we'll see how it goes. You know what I mean? So she was engaged. She worked. She gave back. She got so much from working at the hospital. She was a quiet lady, kind of private. She got so much from working there. She loved it. Again, engaged, learning, talking to people, helping people. So that's another person, but she was a Rosie the Riveter, and that's what they call those ladies. I was also lucky to have two parents, which in this society I see every day, and particularly in the WIC office, that's really not the standard. I had two parents who encouraged me all the time, okay? And that was very lucky to have that. My mother was kind of a stay-at-home mom. My father was a principal. So we didn't have a ton of money, but we had a good family life. And we did things as a family, okay? And that's the thing I encourage. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be something that costs a lot of money. It doesn't have to be, elaborate trips. It could be a trip down to the Wakefield Lake. Make it seem like a big ordeal. I remember when we were kids, we would go for rides on Sunday. We're going for a ride nowhere, right? We'd maybe get a little ice cream, a little something. But strong parents who were together. They are now 80 years old, And my brother and I constantly say, we cannot come between them. They are a team, okay? And if I'm dealing with one, I'm dealing with the other. And if I try to deal with one on the side, it ain't gonna work out well for me. So I respect that they are a team and they've been together for almost 60 years. Another person is Bill Burton, happens to be my husband. He's a good man. I chose well. You know, try to pay attention when you're looking for a spouse, and work as a team. I say all the time at the WIC office, when you're married to somebody, it's you and that person against the world. Mothers are nice, grandmothers are nice, aunts with opinions are wonderful, but you have to be your husband and you as a team, and you have to be on the same line. Now, sometimes you're not on the same line. When I left my corporate job, my husband was not on my same, he was not happy, okay? But he finally realized why I was doing what I was doing. So sometimes you have to make a plan, you have to implement the plan, kind of move along the plan, give somebody a chance to get used to the idea of things. I'm sure you all know, right? But that's how you keep harmony in your home, okay? And you respect the relationship. Okay, where things go wrong, as we see in the office that I work in, when I'm working in the WIC program, you have to be in it together. That's by experience. And then patience is one that is big, and that has to do with my daughter, Elizabeth Burton. I love her dearly, but she is like a mother, a dreamer. Okay, and I have encouraged her to dream, but there's a cost to that. Okay, it's never easy. She didn't go to UMass Amherst. She's in school in California. Okay? When she has a problem, it becomes a bigger problem. But that's part of what I left out there for her. I wanted her to dream. I wanted her to try things. I wanted her to challenge herself. Okay? And I was taught that. And sometimes it's not the easier route. You know, it's not the easier way to go. It's much easier just to stay with the status quo. Yesterday, I happened to go to a cousin of mine who actually had a rough start with life. She got pregnant at probably 19 years old, got married and divorced, and had some really tough times. But now she has a dance studio, and she had a big competition yesterday. And I went and I was hanging out with my cousins, and they're very different than me. Their experience growing up is very different. But what I learned is it's never too late to change and get to where you're going to go. Can't give up on people, okay? Everybody is doing the best they can, okay? And sometimes, in your perspective, you go, why don't they just do this? Why don't they just do that? Sometimes there's something in them that can't allow them to do that. So, two things that I've learned working particularly in corporate America and in the WIC program. And we say it all the time. First one, 80% of the things we worry about, pine about, nervous, constantly thinking about, does not happen. Okay? All the worries, the worry that we have as women, are our kids going to be okay? This, that, the other thing. Half the time, things work out. So I try to do that in those nights when I'm up worrying what's going to happen, that 80% of the time, things do work out. Okay? Second thing is, there's always another path. Okay? One of the cousins I was talking to yesterday actually had a cocaine problem. Okay? So he had a drug problem. And he really had big problems. He's now 45 years old. He's got 3 children. And he told me yesterday that he said, you know what, Cher? He goes, I made $100,000 this year. He said, I made about $50,000 of it in the last 3 weeks plowing, okay? But I'm saying, here's a guy, right, that you would have said, he's never gonna, what's gonna happen to him? You know what? We didn't give up on him. We kept trying. He found a good woman to help him. He's got 3 children. He's a good father, and he's making a living. So don't give up on people. And I know sometimes it's easy to make a judgment, to look at somebody and feel that way. Oh, they're not gonna, there's always hope. And there's always 2 paths, right? I didn't go to Harvard. I ended up in a Harvard-based company, okay? I always wondered how I ended up there, because I went to the University of Rhode Island, and I wasn't the smartest kid in the room. But sometimes life can help you. So My lesson is dream big, try things in your youth, okay, so that when you settle down, you're comfortable with being settled down. Try to pick a spouse that can help you, complement you, as opposed to push you down, okay? My husband is very, lets me do what I want to do. Where if I was with somebody who didn't do that, that wouldn't be so good, you know? I need somebody who lets me, and I let him do things. Two people go, where, I've never seen your husband, where is he? You know, he's actually working today because he's a CPA. He works straight from about January 30th to about April 15th, so I might see him sometime in May. So it's things like that, but it's a funny story. My mother likes to talk on the phone, and I try to say to her, Mom, when Bill comes home after working a 12-hour day, a 14-hour day, I don't like being on the phone. So when he comes home at 9 o'clock, the minute he drives in the driveway, my mother calls. I go, Mom, I do not want to be on the phone when Bill walks in the door. So I hang up on her. I go, so that's my respect for my husband, okay? And sometimes my mother has to get the, right. So I think, you know, in International Women's Day, and one other thing, when I was all over the place with this thing, but you do have to fight as a woman to have a little bit of time for you, okay? Because you are really, particularly have younger children, high school age, you know, elementary school age, every ounce of your time is taken. But sometimes you have to take that little time to have the ice cream sundae like I had this morning and the nice breakfast. It's a little easier now, okay, because my daughter's a little older, but even when I had my job in corporate America and I had no time, sometimes I would do little things like that, say, I have a meeting, I'll be back. And I would go to Kelly's and just sit by myself for 5 minutes and take some time. So really try to, and there'll be time, and then when your kids are older and time goes on, you will have time to get back to, these are the things that I really want to be involved with. But as my grandmother did, get involved in community, give back. She got so much from that job at the hospital. Not only did she always have a doctor's appointment when she needed one, whenever she was in the hospital, she always seemed to get a single room. There was a lot of things that worked out quite nice for her having that job. So did she get paid? Did she get money? No, but she got a lot from that job and kept her going for, 15 years beyond when she retired. So in honor of Women's Day, I say, do what we do, raise our families, take care of our elders, but find that little time just to feed whatever it is you do. If you like to read, go to the beach, sit and read. Give yourself that time, because no one's going to give it to you. You've got to fight for it. So I think that's
Thank you,
it.
Sharon. Rita, you're up again with fun facts. All right, so I guess this time I'm just kind of going to throw things at you, so you can just kind of realize that yes, as women, we really have come a very long way from where we used to be, but just because we've made the progress that we have made, it does not mean that we still don't have a pretty long way to go. So I chose to start this off by a very long time ago, where women were forced that if they were authors and they were writers and they wanted to publish their work, they couldn't. And their only way to do that was to publish it under a woman's name. I mean, a man's name. So that a lot of the books that you might be reading, one of them I actually learned this in my literature class, Shakespeare, many of them believe that he was a woman, and because she wanted his work out there, needed to be a man. Hillary Clinton, I always now remember her as like, whoa, she ran for president. In 1872, a woman ran for president. Her name was Victoria Woodhull, and she was an advocate for the Equal Rights Party. 3 years ago, in 2012, more young women went to university or college than young men did. And I think that's pretty great because based on what I said, a lot of girls don't even get to make it to high school after the age of 14. And 3 years ago, women made it to college and some men didn't. This has all been about presentation given by women. And if you didn't know, as women, the average is 20,000 words a day. A man's is 7,000. So we talk about 3 times as much as they do. And the very last fun fact that I have, The Tale of Genji, it's a Japanese novel. It was published around 1000 AD. Many people consider it to be the very first novel ever published. And that was actually published by a woman. Her name was Murasaki Shikubi. And I think that's pretty great. First book, literature, knowledge, progress, development. That was really started by us. And I really don't see a way we, not as just women, but as women and men, can kind of come together as humans and make all of this so much better. Thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna give you the word for one last time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rita. That was very informative. I didn't know most of the things you just said. Our third guest speaker is Salma Abunai. Please introduce yourself. I didn't know I had a picture.
First of all, happy International Women's Day to all of us, men and women. And I also thank all the organizers for taking the time, and I know it's very hard to plan an event, so thank you so much for doing that. So today I would like to share with you my journey that led me to where I am right now. And I did take some notes because I'm passionate about this, and I thought if I don't write or structure my speech, I'm going to be all over the place because there's just too many things to talk about. So the way I structured my speech, based on the questions that I was encouraged by the organizers to answer, there were basically 4 of them. First one is, can we women do it all? Meaning, can a woman be a wife, a mother, and have a professional career at the same time? Question number 2, do I have a symbol that my experience represents? For example, sacrifice, changes, sense of community, empowerment, involvement, and leadership. Question number 3, is there a woman who inspired me? And question number 4, were there hardships, challenges that I faced as I made strides towards my professional career? So, my biography, I'm a speech language pathologist, and I think the best way I thought I would answer these questions in a way that it makes sense and cohesive is to share with you the transitions or factors that I think played a big role in where I am right now. And I'm going to start with my childhood. So, I believe that my upbringing made a great impact on me. I don't like to use the word successful, but I'd rather use the word I am an achiever, because it's a loaded word, the successful. So, I'm a mother of 2 boys, a wife, a healthcare professional, and a very involved member of the Winchester community, where I live. And I am from a middle-class family. I was raised by a middle-class, my parents are middle-class family, who believe in education, equity, and equality. My mom worked as a full-time elementary teacher. My dad worked as a police inspector. And I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters. My parents treated us equally. The same high expectations were set for both girls and boys. And my aunts and most of my mom's friends were all working mothers. So women were highly respected in my community in Morocco. And this helped me build a lot of confidence from when I was a little girl. I have a twin brother, and we shared both female and male friends. I played lots of sports because probably, well, I have a twin brother, but it just happened I like sports. I was actually a volleyball player with my town club and my college. So, and because of that, I feel like I really I didn't feel gender discrimination when I was growing up in Morocco. So it's very hard for me to talk about it. Yes, we all hear, comments here and there, but it didn't affect me achieve my goals. So to succeed in school in Morocco, it was up to me because my parents provided me with all the means to excel in school. My parents did not spoil me, and we did not have lots of money. But what they did is that they taught us hard work, they taught us integrity, fairness, tolerance, and respect. And I do believe these basic principles were foundations to my current achievements. I came to the United States in 1992. My sister was already established in Cambridge, Mass. At that time, my sister just finished her master's from MIT in electrical engineering, and now she has a PhD. She had a PhD from MIT. And because she was established, it was very easy for me to get to school. She helped me navigate the system, which is very important. So, for me, I didn't go through all the hardships that other people go through because you know how the system works. And that made it very easy. And my plan was to go back to Morocco and to teach linguistics because, back home, one of the prestigious jobs was to teach at the university. So you basically follow everyone's steps. So the next thing I had to do is to do a PhD in linguistics. So while I was doing my PhD in linguistics at BU, I met my husband. And when I met my husband, he's from Lebanon, so he's not Moroccan. So it was very clear it was hard to take him to Morocco or for me to go to Lebanon. So we decided, okay, this is a neutral place. We're going to just live here. So because of that, I had to make that decision. Do I finish a PhD in linguistics or do I do something else because I needed to get a job? So at that time, I looked at different options and communication sciences and disorders was one of the options for me because it was very related to my field. So I did I did my second master's in speech language pathology at the MGH IHP in 2001. I graduated in 2001 and I got my license to practice as a speech therapist in 2002. It was through my husband's support that I was able to do that. So he definitely played a big role in my success. I mean, my parents played it, my family, but then I probably chose the right person to help me with that. So when I started working, it was my first full-time professional job. So it was challenging, I have to say, But again, my hard work, my work ethics, and good mentorship, I was able to gain lots of experience and expertise in my field. And like all of us, we decided to have a family. So here we go, we worked so hard, we get a job, and then the next thing you have to have a family. So I had my first child in 2003, and I decided to stay at home with him for as long as I could. So I was able to do that for 9 months. But economics, you have to go back to job. It's just not sustainable for me to stay with him. And because of my hard work in my first job, that opened doors for me. People got to know me, even my work called me, and then I was able to, they were offering me flexible hours. So I was able to go back, and because of that, I didn't go back full time, I went back part time. And then when I went back part time, I was able to hire a nanny and to take care of my kids, but at the same time, I was able to grow professionally. So I had to balance that, which really helped me. So I did not do full-time where I'm away from my kids, but at the same time, I had someone who took good care of my kids. So that's how I balanced that. And I think this is a story for lots of women here. And this is, so my experience, the way I see it is, it shows how you're continuously balancing between family and work. And it's not an easy thing, but you have to try. And then if it doesn't work, then you try something else. So it's the key here is how do you adapt? And I think that's very important. If you're someone who does not, if you like to be traditional or you want to be the same, then it becomes very hard to achieve goals. And life, every year things change. So you have to take opportunities as they come. So that's basically my journey that shows my balance between work and family. And if I want to summarize, yes, women can balance work and family, but it is up to each woman to find ways to do them. So I cannot tell you how to do it, because my circumstances are very different from yours. But it's going to be up to you to find those ways. And yes, women, I get these questions all the time. Yes, women can select to stay traditional and if they want their roles in the modern society. There is nothing wrong with that, but that's a choice that they have to make. And it's important for these women, I say, to be open-minded to new changes and to balance modernism and tradition. I think this is where lots of questions get asked. Women need to build confidence, and they need to be determined and persistent to attain goals in a world that is still male-dominant. In the US, for example, what I found out was, I felt like I was shocked because, like I said, I didn't have lots of discrimination back home. And because also I grew up here professionally, then I started seeing all the inequities and the problems that actually not just not in the US, worldwide, is that, for example, in the US, what I found is that it is the best democracy in the world. However, the system and the policies are the ones discriminatory for not just women, but minority groups. So this is something that I learned, throughout my living here. And I think it's up to the minority groups to challenge and change these systems. With recent events that we're hearing on the news now, I just came from the Black Month celebration. It was supposed to be in February in Winchester, but they did it today. And we're sharing the same thing. Minority groups are not represented in this country. So, and I am actually optimistic this year, to tell you the truth. 2 years ago I was not. But I'm optimistic that there will be a change. And the reason I see it is because we have so many minority groups that are affected that now they understand each other. And because of that, if we work together, we will make a change. And I think, I have a feeling that things are going to change. We just have to work on it. And we can't wait for people to do things for us. You have to do it. So. And I think I'll end it by equality, equity, freedom, and liberation are basic human rights for all women and all men. So sometimes we just talk about women. It's for all humans. And I think that's what I would like to end my speech. Thank you.
Even though I spoke a little bit about my mother, I didn't share the other parts where she has been my inspiration. She is a nurturer and a caregiver and has been a daycare provider for many years. And so I have learned a lot through her example. So this poem was written for her. It is called How Amazing Is She? There's actually a sequel of poems, but I'm going to read one. How amazing is she to look into her eyes and see your future and past intertwined into everything you wish to be. Could this world be so blind they fail to see the vision of beauty that nurtured me? So what? You're slightly overweight. You're dressed a bit out of style. You speak in your Arabic dialect, but have meaning in your heart's desires. You sacrificed more than anyone could understand or ever would. You ignited light and pushed to inspire, where darkness inhibited and refused to tire. Loved many of God's children until it consumed you, but you were fueled with giving. Like an angel, you touched their lives with love. And could you be more neglectful of yourself to not forget your own and make that be known? You hollered in anger, cried in pain, lost your senses in fear, all to guide your son and daughter, while you worked any given job to support father. Even sold your gold, but not your soul, for how you slaved over kitchens, toilets, and children's diapers, and swallowed your pride in remembrance of a forgotten history that now seems so long ago, when you were served your breakfast and cleaned after. You maintained a well-kept home and welcomed all when you had nothing to show and shared everything you owned. You strived to keep our heritage, keep our family bondage, while you struggled to understand our new tongue and watch us assimilate to foreigners. You opened our minds to visions of freedom. While we were isolated from freedom land's oppression, you humbled our ways to accept one another, enabled us with the power of truth and sincerity to see through ourselves and others, showed us the strength and resilience to cope and survive through the hard times with hope, provided us the tools to express ourselves how we chose while you molded us into believing that what we choose should reflect righteousness and intelligence. And in turn, we reflected you, alien mother. How dare they call you an alien when you are in all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a 10-minute open discussion session. I hope you guys came prepared with your questions. For the guest speakers, the AAA members, and officials from the city. Go ahead, please.
I like the idea of helping women around the world, but my fear is that maybe in Afghanistan, Pakistan, countries like that, like they would reject the Western, type help. I don't know if it would work or not. I don't know how to help women around the world,
Right. Does any one of the guest speakers want to answer this question?
I can get it. Yeah. So I think the first question is what your expectations from women from, say, Pakistan. I feel like the media plays a role where it's not representing all women in Pakistan. So the first thing is to help people in Pakistan, for example. First of all, we work here as because we live in a community where we speak the same language, say, for example, in Malta. We talk to each other, then we do the same thing outside. So we speak the same language, and we try to reach women who might be very similar to us in our thinking from Pakistan. And then by empowering those women, they might have an influence on the other women in their countries. So when we speak about women in those countries, there is a whole spectrum of these women. I mean, my friends are from Pakistan, are actually very strong women. So we can work with them to find a way to make some influence, but we also have to hear their voice, because sometimes what happens is that we try to find solutions for these people while we're not even asking what they want. So we have to have a dialogue, and then when we get to speak the same language, then we'll see how we find solutions.
And maybe Sharon, you wanted to add to that?
Like your sphere of influence is here, like you said. And sometimes people look to see what is possible. And what is possible sometimes is what you can do in your environment here. For instance, at the WIC office, we deal with women from all different cultures. So maybe somebody comes into the WIC office and has a good experience, okay? And then they can tell their friend. We're always about women helping each other out, okay? Women have so much knowledge, and sometimes all you need is one person to tell you, this is how this is done. Like you said, navigate the system. One person can make a big difference in somebody's life if somebody just takes that time to help somebody. And you do it step by step. To think that we're going to influence somebody on the other side of the world might not be possible, but we can help somebody here who does have a connection there. And then they see the possibility, you know.
Dr. Khouly would like to answer your question, and then we'll take Farah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the question. It will be very difficult to really reach out to people outside U.S. or countries around us, but we have to deal. The best thing that I see is to teach and encourage and give more, a sense of community and strength to young girls and boys from different countries, like Pakistan, like Egypt, like Morocco, if they are from families who are not giving them this strength to have their own identity. So if we encourage them and get this new generation the power and the respect for themselves and their own opinions, we can actually have influence in every one of them, and that can give them the power to do and achieve what they want, and they face the oppression of a family, for example, of a brother, of a father, of the structure of the family. They are very, connected, and maybe they have to listen to grandmother. Some Asian families, the grandmother is controlling everybody, and give strength to the new generation. I think this is how it can propagate. I think, this is my opinion of how to start or where to start. And especially with people who work in schools and hospitals or in universities, and empower the new generation. And the reason I'm saying boys and girls is even boys sometimes are oppressed in some of these cultures.
Thanks for sharing your opinion with us. Farah, please.
And I just wanted to emphasize, I think it's an interesting question when we think about how do we reach someone when they're so far away. And there are more resources in terms of outreach now than there ever were before. I mean, I remember volunteering at a remote Berber, mountainous village where we were teaching literacy to women, and they couldn't leave their homes or couldn't leave their communities. But now there are programs that you can find, especially when it comes to literacy. Literacy is one of the, in terms of Afghanistan and Pakistan for these women, and sustainable economic development. There are many, many projects out there that are being supported from other parts of the world, from England and here from home, that support those women locally. And so I think, with enough research, there's plenty that doesn't necessarily sort of force our own values and our own perceptions about what should these women be. It's not diminishing their role, because I think that's just very similar to how they have been sort of, really underrepresented largely by the male, power, and we're in these situations. So how do we give voice to these women? Is by empowering them to really be able to live and sustain a household, and be able to create and develop something that will be useful for sale, or be able to learn skills that will equip them to make something useful in a market. Because a lot of it, I think, unfortunately, comes down to not just regional politics, but it's sustainable economic development, and how do these women how do we empower them by finding resources and venues that are already there locally.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
That's kind of where social media comes in a bit.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't love social media, but for change, it does let people know it's possible. Some of the recent things that have gone on, you can't control information, right? Information is power. In the old days, certain people had all the information. Now it's kind of out there. So someone sitting in a remote village may see, hey, wait a minute, what is going on over here that I'm not being a part of? So there is going to be I think it's going to be more difficult to keep women down when they see possibilities in other places. So that would be maybe a good thing with social media, that people will see there's other ways. It's going to be hard to keep a lid on it, as I'm saying, because information is too readily available. So.
I have an idea, just you open it up for me.
Right.
That is it possible that maybe we can, through the internet, we can organize a website, and women who are achievers can put little bit of their stories, how did they struggle through something to achieve the goal.
Yep.
And it can be different, it doesn't have to be the whole book or their whole life story, but it's just examples of an open, as I said, a website. My son is a publisher, and he is very organized with the website. He has his own, the Rashid Foundation. He's only 27 years old, but I can ask him to see if he can design a website for achieving women, and it can be on the internet. Does that sound like a possibility that can reach to people?
I don't know too much about social media either,
But the young people do.
yeah.
Because that's where they get all their information from.
Right.
Whether it's true or not true, they get it from there. So yes,
For women,
yes.
for women who achieve, and it can be in the present tense, and it will be a special site, and women like whoever achieved a career, how they did the career with family life, and put their own examples and open it to others.
Yep.
I don't know if that can be a social.
Or maybe the association could have a little story part of it.
Right. Yeah. The stories.
Do you think this can?
I think it's a good idea. I think some of those stories already exist on YouTube.
Yeah.
They just have to know how to navigate the net to get to them.
Do you know the name of some of these websites?
To be honest with you,
Or you
I
do
go
a search?
online and I just reduce the criteria of the search until I get to this very, very narrow
Okay.
area of search, and it condenses, the search engine into what I am
I
looking
know it's
for, but I
open
don't
discussion,
have
so I'm just speaking loud,
Yeah,
thinking loud.
think aloud.
Do you think we can do something under AAA?
W, we could certainly get together and discuss
Where
this
is-
further.
Where is our president
with
Saad?
Flag
If
and-
we want to do something like that, so actually, I mean, Arab women have similar background to women from the rest of the third world countries, and I have to admit that. And maybe that can open to others who we make it in English, so other people in Pakistan and Afghanistan and these not Arab speakers can reach out, and maybe they have cultural background or same religion, and show that our stories, everyone who achieved, a woman who is achiever, can give strength and empower a girl somewhere there. Let me know if you like to design a website. It's approval, like you want me to look into it?
Can I add, I think going back, I'm trying to understand your question again. for the women who might not want to get help. Is that part of your question?
Actually, no, part of your question was for women to be afraid of getting help from, to be afraid not to be able to get help from Westerners. People in the Middle East being afraid not to be able to get help from the West because of the way they're being portrayed in the media.
Well, I take part in, it's called the Pennies for Peace program. And it was started by an American man that he was climbing a mountain and he got lost coming down, and he was rescued by someone in Pakistan, I think it was. And to thank the man, he said he nursed him back to health, and he said, "What can I do for you?" And the man said, "Build a school." So he started this program where he gets the funds from U.S. citizens, and the local people build the school. He doesn't tell them what to teach or anything. And he's built a lot of schools in rural Pakistan and Afghanistan and Waziristan or something.
And that was
And,
a charity operated out of the U.S.?
The name of the website, I think, is Alima, A-L-I-M-A. And I just save pennies and nickels in a jar, and usually when I fill a jar, it's $40, and I send it to them. And like, you can choose to help stock teachers pencils and paper, or whatever, or just where it's needed most. Recently, one of the schools in Afghanistan was bombed. That's the first time that happened, but,
Well, thanks for sharing. I certainly was
he
not
thinks
aware of.
you teach a girl and she teaches her family, better.
Think about Cuba. The big thing they didn't want to do is give them the internet. Okay? And so when Cuba made this recent agreement with the United States, one of the big things is they're going to get the internet. So once that happens, it's hard to kind of control. Does North Korea have the internet? Probably not. So a lot of these oppressive governments kind of make sure they keep a lid on that stuff. So once that stuff starts happening, it's hard to kind of stop the momentum because people start seeing what is possible. So,
Fadela, I think you had a comment.
In all this, we would love also to integrate the men in our lives and in other countries. These are the clues to outreach to them, and they are the ones who can help the woman to achieve the success she can get to. Because a lot of oppression comes from the patriarchal families and patriarchal countries. That's how we have to reach out to the men more than women. This is how can women achieve their freedom and their education. Sometimes you find people who are, I have multiple examples, but you have like a family trying to get their daughters to have an education, but at the same time they are struggling with different opinions from other people, and they start pulling back on their daughters. And they don't want, because they are afraid of other things that happening to the girl. The girl is changing her mind. The girl is having opinions. The girl is not accepting what she had before. And that's the problem. We have to have an outreach within our communities, men in our communities, to reach out to other men in other countries and other communities, and to help them accept the change in their family, in their female families. That's the problem with the female in other countries. Not the woman. No, the woman would like to have and would like to achieve, but the men are already putting all kinds of censures.
it was like that in the United States too. Years and years ago, but it's changed over time,
Yeah.
I would say we live that in our association, but for men, we want to achieve what we have today.
Yeah.
Really, like, okay, that's number one support. And one of them is over there.
By the way, guys, that's her husband, so, that's her husband, she needs to put in a photo.
No, in some cases, the train has left the station, right? You can say, I would like it to be this way, I would like it to be this way, but once the change starts coming, you know, it's kind of hard to change it. You can correct it one generation, two generations, you start moving, you know, with the westernization of things, it's hard to control it, I think, you know?
We have a saying in Arabic, it says, behind every great man, a woman. I think we have to change it, behind every great woman, a man. I think it's very important. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to be where I am without my dad's open-mindedness. I mean, my dad, in my story, my sister, when she got an opportunity to leave house at age 15 to pursue her studies, around, you know, the community, it was, how can you send your girl at age 15?
Right.
He had to close his ears.
Yeah.
And because of that, she was able to come and then she had a degree from Bryn Mawr and Caltech and MIT because of my dad. Right. I think that's very important. That also helped us also choose the right man, not the right man, I can't say right man, but when I was looking for a partner, you look at these things, I mean, that's a choice you make.
Right.
So definitely, my dad played a huge role in it, and then my husband is still doing it. Without his help, I couldn't do what I'm doing now. So we should change that, behind every great woman, a man.
Yes, no, I think it's interesting that we share those stories. I think because of the cultural relevance they play, particularly for women of our descent and culture. And similarly, I always say my father is the reason why I am the woman I am. My mother plays a role, obviously, but you know, when I was 10 years old and I wanted to play football, my father brought me to the team.
Right.
The captain was there and the coach, and they were like, well, she's, you know, it's a girl, and he was like, yeah, but she wants to play football.
Right.
You know, and I think he actually thought it was soccer football initially, but it was American football. And it was like a year after we integrated here, and he was like, well, that's what she wants to do. And I think that, right, like what that signifies, and the symbolism behind the family structure and the makeup of the family structure, and just how important it is and the relevance to have not just a father at home, right? And I think that's one factor, but a father and a man who supports, right? Who supports, you know, whether it's the daughter, whether it's the wife, and being able to sort of achieve, like the idea that my mother was a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, that she was, you know, leading and taking charge. You know, I think having those roles play as an example, obviously, you know, you have women who, you know, rise to the occasion in terms of who they are and their leadership and their roles because of that in our society. But how much of that do we sort of bridge the gap within the social, like, I'm thinking of the social stratification. There is such a gap, right, in between whether it's the haves and have-nots economically, or also socially. You know, in Morocco is a prime example of, you know, those who are well off and are highly educated, who choose to maybe only speak in French, or, you know, don't wear the hijab and are very much, you know, progressive. How much of that are we sort of like taken to a degree where we're so far removed from what is happening locally, what is happening in where the majority of these women are affected. Right. And so I think we have to look at it in that sense of like, what is the local, you know, makeup? What is the social stratification? What is that family structure? And how do we target that and be able to say, like, these are broader, and we can't disassociate just because we've reached a platform and a status of being highly educated or progressive.
Okay, great, thank you so much. It looks like our music team is ready to perform, and we are running out of time.
Hello, everyone.
مريدي أنا مريدي مريدي مغربي عيني مريدي أنا مريدي على المغرب موتنا وضحية برعاية الحنان وكتابة الحنان حبك ليا يا بلادي يا أرض السلام يا بلاد الحنان والحرية يا بلدي برعاية الحنان حبك ليا حبك ليا يا بلادي وقلب الطيب وتقبل الهموم عمرك ما تخيب الناس المغرب وقلب الطيب وتقبل الهموم عمرك ما تخيب ولا عليكم يا سيدي انا عليكم التوبة لكم على النبي التوبة لكم ولو الصيف يا نبي وصيكم صوت المغرب كالنبي ظلمكم
We know you have more beautiful boys than
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today to help us celebrate with women all over the world, Women's International Day. We do thank you for your attendance, and we are looking forward to seeing you again next year. On behalf of the AAAW team, we say thank you. Looking forward to our next session with you guys. Thank you.